Welcome back, subscribers. I'm going to talk about overall system mechanics. That sounds interesting. But I'm going to tell a little bit of story, something that struck me today. I was doing my morning meditation, and something struck me that it was when I get these, I get past experiences and how I was, the impression of the past experience, and then how it is relating to the moment in time that we're in right now. And I'm doing a project at my on one of our properties, and I'm doing some brick work, some masonry work. And no, I'm not a mason by secret society terms, but I have a lot of craft ability, and I've always done projects where I was a general contractor remodeler, and a lot of times like guys would not be available to come out and do things, so I would just do them, and or just finish something or get something started, something like that, and then let the subcontractors come in and like finish it off. But if it was something that was a small repair, I would just kind of handle it myself instead of wait, a few weeks until they were actually ready to come out and do it. So that's the difference in contracting between a paper contractor and somebody who's like an owner operator that can kind of like handle business and keep things going. And so I would just do it. Um, I wasn't afraid just to try it because a lot of times there's situations where when you're working, I think people are afraid, regardless of whatever it is, whether it's working with your hands or it's office desk work or something like that, that they seem like they have like a like they like tunnel vision, that they can have a handle only XYZ tasks. If you hire an employee, if you've been on the hiring side, whatever the job requires, the tasking, that they only stay on that task and they don't deviate off of it. They never have a question. They never. Occasionally, you'll get people that are the good ones, but they end up becoming their own business owners and their own managers, or move up high into the hierarchy later because they're able to take the bull by the horns. And that is a trait that seems to be incredibly rare. um, so I'm doing this project, and when I was young, uh, there was always something that troubling is not really the correct term. Um, I just couldn't understand why somebody would do something if the repercussions were, uh, down the road. Like being able to see like 10 shots ahead, like playing a chess match, or playing pool is another one. And the people that are really good at these games, they already know specific moves, and they already know that if I do whatever motion, movement you make, that it has repercussions, and they're all right with those gains or losses. And they just continue to keep plodding along. And the people that are successful, excuse me, are we have an ability to see this dynamic. We can see 10, 15 shots ahead, and we can see what's going on. And that ultimately is where it seems like we have our shit together, right? That's kind of the term. And what it actually really is noticing something from the past that doesn't really sit very well, and like maybe you've had an experience or something that is putting you into that space to say like, oh, if I had my chance, I would have done it a little bit differently. I would have done um, you know the steps would have been different in the organization. So when I was young, it struck me this morning. I was like, oh, geez, I've had this my whole damn life. So when I was young, we moved into this town, and I was really excited to. I remember it was fifth grade, and some of the children that lived near the school, they got to be crossing guards in fifth grade, which is like a really cool thing. They're like, oh yeah, we get to be like kind of in charge. It's like, oh wow, that's really cool. You get this sash, and wow, that's really great. This is back in the day whenever they just like kids walk to school with no parents, and no helicopter parents. There was no such thing back then. Um, and I thought, wow, that'd be really great. And he gets to ride a skate, but you got to ride your bike to school or your skateboard to school. Like, wow, that's really cool. And they're like, well, uh, anyway, it was like this impression of me, like, wow, this would be really great. And we lived outside of the village. So I was, miles away from this, village area. and they had sidewalks and, like a regular town. And I just had this impression, wow, this would be so great living in this space. And later, parents get divorced. We ended up, my mother bought a house inside the village, and uh, I got to use the sidewalks. Finally, I was in like seventh, eighth grade, something like that. I was just so excited. I was like, wow, yeah, I get to like, play, like ride my bike, skateboard, do things. And I did it. Went out to do it. The sidewalks are just absolutely trashed. They were because of all the trees and foliage and things like that were growing over the years because it was an older area. A lot of the homes were built, anywhere from like 80 to 100 years ago in that range. And the trees that were there were older growth trees, huge trees, and they would be right on the roadside, and right next to the roadside there would only be like maybe a 2 or 3 foot space, basically for the trunk and then the sidewalk. And the sidewalk would heave, right? The sections of the sidewalk would just like peel up and be like dangerous. But it was kind of fun on a bike because you could like jump your bike and stuff like that, but you couldn't skateboard on it. The concrete was, because we were in the north, the snow and ice had just like ruined the top layer of the concrete, and it wasn't smooth, so you couldn't ride a skateboard on it. Um, just all kinds of things, like in my mind, like it was like rewiring it of what I had thought. And I'm going somewhere with this. And it always struck me as like, well, why the hell would you plant a tree right next to something that that in 60, 80 years that it's going to ruin this area? Like, why would you do that? I don't understand. Like, and it was everywhere that I went, it was the same type of thing. And in our village, and then there was another town area that was near us. I started paying attention to this, and it was everywhere. And then when I got into doing work, tree companies that would have to take trees down, and it was a major task. I mean, they'd have to like take the concrete off and grind the stump and like all this business. And I'm like, how do you not know that's coming? Like we're gonna plant a tree that in 50, 60 years it's gonna be a pain in the ass, right? So when it came time for me in the building industry space, I had asked, I was doing stuff on my own, initially speaking, once we got going. And once I got into the contract world with some of the national home builders that were handling all of the design work on the front end of these subdivisions, I I took notice the same thing, that they'd make these subdivisions like cookie cutter, like it was like the movie Toy Story, where or any movie that you've seen, that is kind of Americana type of thing, where it's like streets and sidewalks and trees, and maybe it's like a tree lined street that you drive down. It's like so beautiful and all sorts of. And I thought, well, they're doing exactly the same thing that was done, 100 years ago. Whenever they started like cookie cuttering houses, like post World War II is whenever the really the housing boom started in the United States, and the town management really kicked in, where you get city, definitive grid systems and water systems and electrical systems and so on and so on. So they really had it like pretty much down pat by the 50s, and then there was a huge building boom to put the boomers into housing so that they could have a place to live. And so I asked a project manager. Our company was not a landscaping company, so it was just saying, again, one of these things of like, it's striking me like, why the hell would you do this? Like, knowing full well that this is a headache, a major problem in the future. Like, it's not, um, you're creating a very destructive, because of this design that you've done with putting, trees on streets and right next to sidewalks, it's creating a problem down the road. And I asked a project manager, I was like, why the hell do you guys do this? Because I was friends with these guys, and the PMs are guys that wear collared shirts, and they're in an office setting. And I was just going through there doing some billing or whatever else, and we're just like small talk or whatever else. And I just asked the question. I was like, "Why do you do this? Why would you plant knowing full well?" And the guys, that one of the companies I did a lot of work for, they would bring people down from the north, and so they were Yankees, so they knew they had exactly the same spirits. And I would maybe like set it up and be like, hey, when you were young, like in the town that you grew up in, did you guys have actually do with trees and sidewalk? Oh yeah, they're totally fucked up. Yeah. And I said, well, how come nobody like raises their hand and be like, hey, this is a really crappy, future solution. This doesn't really work. Um, this doesn't like, why don't you fix this? Because this basically ruins infrastructure like right out of the box. And they said, well, we're not going to be here for it. and it struck me like, well, yeah, you're right, but I said, but that still doesn't change the fact that it's going to be messed up. I'm like, I get that, for from now, if you add another 60, 80 years on me, I'm not going to be here. Exactly. So I'm not going to have to take the tree down, and I'm not going to have to deal with sidewalks. So I said, well, but that doesn't take away the problem. Like, you guys are not fixing any of the problems. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. The frequency of it, it's the same thing. It's just these cycles. So um, it just struck me. Like, I said, well, why would you do it? He said, well, because that's what sells the houses. He said that we have to, by the town, put them in there. I said, so the town mandates that you have to put these trees in? Like, yes. Or it would be the project, um, the rules of the project, like, and they were the ones that were like controlling it. And I'm like, but you guys could make the changes so that it would be better. And they're like, yeah, but people want to see trees on the streets, so that's what they get. They want the trees on the streets, and they want the sidewalks to be covered, and so on and so on. And I said, but he said, well, they're not going to be here either. So the ones that are going to have to deal with it are going to be, future generations. They're just going to have to deal with it because, like, right now, this is what sells houses. So, how does this? What does this have to do with what I'm talking about? So, from a financial perspective, like where we are right now in the United States is exactly the same thing. Like, the system that was, excuse me, created was uh, not thinking about the, a way off distant future. It's it's dealing with what people are satisfied with right now, and there's an instantaneous gratification that is rampant through, I think, all of the human race. I think it's just an inherent, like, it's baked into the DNA, and there's no way to really get away from it. So the administrators know this, and they just continue to keep doing the same things over and over and over and over again, and they do it in different cyclical uh, uh, periodicities. And these cycles are pretty well predictable, because once things start getting a little bit out of hand, then they make a decision and just wipe the whole thing out. Case in point, there was the town that I grew up in. There was a really cool street that had these really great maple trees on it. So the fall, it was like lined with these maple trees, and beautiful. So the fall was beautiful. Like lots of really vibrant colors, and just like you were immersed in all this color saturation when you drive down the road. And it was always just a very like soothing space. Everybody has these in these old towns that you have to, like, these nostalgic type of thoroughfares that you can go down. And we went up and visited a couple of years ago, and all the trees were wiped out. I mean, they were really, really big. They had been planted back around like early 1900. So they were, over 100-year-old trees, and just gigantic, enormous trees, jacked up the sidewalks, but the entire street was totally, covered by a tree canopy. And it was shocking to drive down this road, because it was all just wide open and sunlight coming through where you just had not had it ever before. And it ruined the appearance. It just ruined everything. And it it's just not the same experience again. And that's essentially where we are right now with this great reset. The This moment we're in right now is taking all kinds of things, like social aspects, financial aspects, how we do business, how we correspond with one another with digital. There are things that are really coming to a head, where metaphorically, it's like we're at the point where we've taken out a couple of trees, and we know that the rest of them need to be taken down too. So they are preparing for the decimation, if you will, and removal of all of the trees in our social and financial systems, all systems in general, and that they get dismantled and rebuilt. And it gives people other things to do, right? So like if you're talking trees and concrete, it provides work and uh, jobs, things like that, right, for people to get out and remove them. And same thing is going to happen with the event that's coming up. It's going to be a a very disruptive event that's going to happen that is it's going to affect everybody in some kind of different way, and it's but preparing for it and understanding that it's coming. I think the more people that you talk to, they can kind of sense it, because they, whether or not you're into the, you know paying attention to all the frequencies and how, the cyclical nature of how things run, and maybe you weren't paying attention to things whenever you were young, like I was, but and how to apply them to, your elder years. You just kind of know that something's just kind of like, it's kind of done, and they're going to just dismantle it, and then we're the ones that have to kind of pick up the pieces and rebuild it. And it's kind of sad in one, it's scary and sad, I'd say, but in another, in a lighter tone, it's kind of nice, because then it makes room for new space. Maybe instead of maple trees, we're going to plant oak trees. Maybe no trees, maybe, right, street lights and bushes. No, right, it's like you have an open, your landscape or palette, or um, uh, the substrate that you're applying these elements to is wiped clean. So you're like, okay, clean the blackboard, do whatever you want. It's gonna be great. Whatever color you want, this height, that. You just change those things, and the same relative element is happening in the financial world, social fabric, everything is being essentially just dismantled. It's just society has gotten to the point where the roots have just absolutely heaved all the concrete everywhere, and it's time to just like trash it. And this is already known. Like I said, this is a known factor. So what we do in the reservoir is, we we understand this, and we wanted to know, like, what are the mechanisms that, how do I get in on being the tree service? How do I get in on being uh, the design company that designs the new landscape, right? How do I move forward? How do I get in the new world space, if you will, on being part of the new space, not just, standing on the side and watching all of these crews come in and wipe everything out, and people left with, I wish the trees were still here. And moving on is it's a hard fact, life that you have to deal with in anything of loss. Whenever something happens, is moving on. Like, if you've experienced death, your parents, any family member, an animal, something like that, it's crushing. So especially whenever it's been baked into society of the American way, right? So they're not going to totally remove it. They're just going to reset it, right? So basically reset the game board and get everybody on the starting line again, and then see what happens. Okay, this, right? Maple trees, oak trees, maybe these people want to do no trees, maybe it's whatever, right? And just kind of see what happens. And from my perspective, that's pretty exciting, because whenever these change elements happen, it's wide open. If you're a visionary, somebody that is understanding, like, what are the new rules of the game, and how do I position myself so that I can be in that space to be putting back the way that I think that it needs to be put back. And the new rules are, from the appearance of where we're looking right now, they're a hell of a lot more restrictive, but they're just monitoring everything. So I would say this for people that have not had business experience: it is like having to use an accountant. Like, every transaction is 100% accounted for, every penny. If you've ever dealt with the account, they're like, well, this doesn't, the books don't add up, and da 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 da. How much is it off? 30 cents. Okay, just like, is that really that big a deal? Like, who cares? Well, you're gonna have to pay tax on that. I'm like, okay, well, let's, like, just stop sweating it. Why did you even call me for 30 cents? But that's the way that they think. So the new transactional system, which whether or not you're in the banking finance world or it trickles down to the tree removal company or the concrete guy. um, they're going to be dealing with exactly the same system because it's all congruent all the way across the board. Um, so is it going to eliminate corruption? Absolutely not. That's one thing nostalgically, surprisingly enough, that is going to remain. And it's just going to take a matter of time till the nefarious bad actors are going to figure out a way to augment the system that they created because they've created loopholes and backdoors. And those gray areas are the things that I'm highly interested in as well because they use this as a ways to make money, but they're rug pull elements that they plug in that they know full well of what they're doing, and they get people leaning to believe in a system. They want you to believe. That's the whole trick to the whole magic uh, trick that they do. They want you to believe that they're this time that they're telling the truth, but that's not the case. So it's like play by the rules, move forward, and learn the new game, but then also know in the back of your mind, like, hey, I know these guys are dirty, so I'm gonna have to do business with these dirty uh, politicians and bankers and so on and so on. And they're looking at it as a way to, it's like as if you didn't read the fine print. They're like, well, it's all in the contract. You didn't read the contract. So those are the things that we're interested in, and those are the things that we're archiving and putting together inside of our space, and keeping it privatized. Because from what I've seen is that whenever people learn of these, I guess you could call them loopholes, these tricks and things like that on how to really prosper in a system, that whenever things become mainstream and everybody's doing it, that's whenever they do rug pulls. So we're like, well, why don't we just privatize it so that we can get some breathing room between us and them, you know? And so once we kind of figure out their game and know their rules, then whenever we make a decision to kind of step into their space and say like, well, hey, we've read the fine print and we're going to do exactly what you're doing, um, and so that we can, excuse me, prosper. And but we're not doing your crazy wacky rituals that you're doing on islands in the Caribbean. We're not going to do that, but we know your tricks. So that's what we do. That's what we do here. And I'll have more to come. I get these musings and things like that, and things that strike me, and kind of how to weave it back into current affairs and like what's essentially happening, and then be like, well, what's the timeline? What's the timeline? So we're looking at. I'll probably repeat this a bunch through my videos from here on out. We're looking at around somewhere between 2028 and 2029 is when there'll be I don't know if it's going to be apparent. Like the new system will kick in, right? I think on Main Street, I don't think people are going to really notice until a couple of years after, that it'll be like kind of a slow kind of thing that will be identified as being um, that you're just going to automatically be in this system. It's not a mark of the beast bullshit. It's not Armageddon, or you know the new Earth and the old Earth, where certain souls are not going to move forward into the new space, or a cosmic snapshot and all this other business. Kind of, but not in the way that is being depicted in uh, the kind of like psychic woo world, and not the way that it's being depicted on the fear mongering world from the Infowars side of the fence. It's it they're correct in that these new systems do get corrupt, and they're corrupt people creating corrupt systems. So just know the corruption. That's all I'm saying. And it's like, just like the planting the trees, they're just going to keep doing it, and people are like, well, why, we need to stand up. Well, it's so compartmentalized that the ones that are actually contributing to this don't even know that they're doing it. This runs rampant all the way through all of humanity. So once you understand the compartmentalization and how large this is, and what's at stake and how much money's in it, you can't stop it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. So it's like, well, when in Rome, this isn't my space. I don't have a title ownership of my body. My soul is not part of this. It's a separated element of this, but it's not um it wasn't married up in documentation to my physical body. Physical body is water and minerals that are earth, and they're part of earth, and earth is a business system. And when you start looking at it from that perspective, um, then whoever is administrating on the earth has set rules for those that are the administrators that are basically running and setting up our societies for us. And yeah, so I won't get any more on that because that's kind of a pretty deep topic. But anyway, change. It's going to change. It's going to be different. But we're not going to see how it's the same thing because we're not going to be around to see it. And to say it's for your children, it's like we're living in a repeat loop. And as you see histories, if you really understand history, it's been happening as long as there's been humans on the planet. It's been the same relative activity. They just changed the modeling a little bit, right? So now we're, instead of using gold and silver to trade, then it's dollars, then it's crypto, and then it'll be something else. It'll be something else, and they just keep reinventing it. Same thing. They're using like the same ingredients every single time, and then they're just reapplying them to the existing space. Be more to come. Cheers.